Good afternoon and welcome to the press conference after the Justice and Home Affairs Council in the format of Justice Ministers. The Romanian Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Justice ad interim, Mrs. Ana Bircal, who presided the meeting today, and the European Commission on Justice, Consumers and Gender Equality, Mrs. Vera Jourova, will present you the outcome. Afterwards, the floor will be open for questions. Doamnă viceprim-ministru, aveți cuvântul, vă rog.
Thank you so much. Firstly, dear Vera, thank you so much for such a wonderful meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, thank you for coming. Today we had a very fruitful meeting of the Ministers of Justice. The agenda included a significant number of items of high interest. Firstly, we have taken note of the progress report on the regulation on the assignment of claims. The Romanian presidency has proceeded with the examination of the proposal initiated during previous presidencies. The challenging issues are related to which general rule to be used in determining the applicable law and the scope of application of the general rule to establish the applicable law to the third-party effects of assignments of claims. These issues and few others are still pending before any final decision could be taken by the Council. In addition, it has become obvious that the regulation could have an impact on financial markets and the related pieces of Union law. It must be ensured that the acquis is fully coherent before agreeing on a general approach. The work will continue under the Finnish presidency. Then we have had a policy debate on the digitalization of judicial cooperation in civil and commercial matters. Digitalization is the key common objective of the two proposals, namely the proposal for amending the regulation on the services of documents and the proposal for amending the regulation on the taking of evidence. During discussions in the working party meetings, member states have raised concerns about certain aspects of the proposal, such as the mandatory introduction and use of an IT system, the security features of the IT system, the centralized or decentralized nature of this IT system, or the use of an existing software solution, such as e-Codex, versus the development of a new one. The clear estimation of costs associated with the suggested digitalization process have proven to be very important. This is why, in order to make further progress on these files, the Presidency decided to seek political guidance on the way forward. Work will continue under the Finnish Presidency. I have informed the Ministers on current legislative proposals. On non-legislative items, we have had a very good policy debate on the future of EU substantive criminal law based on a report presented by the Romanian presidency. The report concludes that while a specific focus should be put on ensuring the effectiveness and quality of the implementation of existing EU legislation, it may be worth continuing the reflection process on the need to further legislate on some common definitions and or in some specific areas such as environment, crime and trafficking of cultural goods. The report enjoyed great support from delegations. Then we have had a fruitful policy debate on the way forward in the field of mutual recognition in criminal matters based on a report prepared by the Presidency. Under this Presidency, the Council proceeded to an evaluation of the current legal and institutional framework of the Union in the field of judicial cooperation in criminal matters. The aim of this exercise was to assess what has been achieved so far and to examine whether there are any deficiencies or gaps on how this could be addressed in an efficient manner. The report stated that the focus should be on facilitating the practical application of existing legal instruments, including by means of judicial training, rather than on new legislative proposals. However, in order to address current legislative gaps, the report acknowledges that it would be justified to assess in the future the adversability of new legislative proposals in areas such as transfer of criminal proceedings or procedural rights. The report also underlines that all member states welcome the excellent work carried out by Eurojust and the European Judicial Network. We believe that the report is a practical tool for incoming presidencies and the Commission, including for drafting future justice and home affairs strategic guidelines. The report is without prejudice to the outcome of the 9th round of mutual evaluation. Then the Council adopted conclusions on the synergies between Eurojust and the networks established by the Council in the area of judicial cooperation in criminal matters. These conclusions, the Council encourages Eurojust and the networks to further develop coordination and synergies. The conclusions also touch upon the issues of financial resources for Eurojust and by extension for the networks concerned. These resources should be adequate in order to allow Eurojust and the networks to carry out their activities in a proper manner. Of course, we are dependent in this respect of a multi-annual financial framework, which is still to be agreed upon. The conclusions also address the issues of exploring the possibility to establish a secretariat. Under the point related to the European Public Prosecutor Officer, the Commission provided its regular update on the implementation of the European Public Prosecutor Office regulation. The Council adopted 2 Council decisions on e-evidence, namely on the opening of negotiations for EU-US agreement on cross-border access to e-evidence and respectively on authorizing the participation in the negotiations on a second additional protocol to the Budapest Convention. The Council adopted conclusions on data retention. With this, the Presidency aimed to ensure a follow-up to the ministerial discussions held back in December 2018. At that point in time, some of the delegations urged to consider further steps with regard to the data retention regime in the EU. Based on the outcome of those discussions, the Romanian Presidency prepared conclusions that provided for clear guidance to the Commission on the steps we consider necessary to undertake, namely a comprehensive study and possible solutions, including of legislative nature. The Council ended with 2 information points, one from the Lithuanian delegation on actions against judges and prosecutors, and the other on the work program of the incoming Finnish presidency. Very briefly, I would also like to mention that the ministers adopted as a point a note with regard to the participation of the EU to GRECO. During our presidency, GRECO was discussed several times, following up on the discussions held during the previous presidencies. In a nutshell, the presidency has proposed that the Council call for the participation of the EU in GRECO with observer status and invites the Commission to present the relevant proposals for a Council decision at the earliest opportunity. Presidency's approach was supported by a large majority of the Member States. As a conclusion, after this last meeting of the Justice and Home Affairs Council under the Romanian Presidency, I'm very proud to state that we have accomplished all the priorities of our presidency in the area of justice. I would like to express my gratitude, my thanks for all our partners in this important endeavor, the EU institutions and the Member States. Together we have advanced the EU agenda in the justice area. And before concluding, I would also like to say thank you to our permanent representative here, our ambassador here, all the people that was working in the Romanian presidency, my team back from the Ministry of Justice. It's been a great honor and pleasure to work with you all. I am very grateful for this honor. It's a joy and sadness today that we are coming to an end, and I cannot express in words how proud I am that the Romanian presidency achieved all its objectives in the justice field, and I hope that with this in mind, again, Romania proved to be a very reliable, trustful member state, and likewise an honest broker. I will end by saying thank you, particular thank you to the Commissioner, to Vera, for her great work, for her leadership, and for her friendship towards Romania and towards me and towards us. Together, I think we've done an amazing work. And special thanks to the Secretariat of the Council. So thank you so much, and in the end, thank you to you, the representatives of mass media, by being all the time close to us, along with us, and showing the good work that we have done. So thank you all. Thank you. Vera, thank you. It's been a great honor to work with you.
Thank you, Presidency. Commissioner, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I will start where Anna Birchau finished by thanking the colleagues from the Romanian presidency, by confirming that indeed the priorities have been accomplished. And I always hear at this moment when the presidency is finishing that there are mixed feelings, the joy and disappointment that something very important is finishing. Romanian presidency was running in a very exceptional era or a period, because, you know, it was just before the elections and we were in a big hurry to adopt all possible legislation, all the legislation possible to be adopted. It was a marathon of meetings, trialogues, days and nights. I see some of the colleagues with whom we spent really a lot of time. It was a heroic performance from the Romanian colleagues, especially ladies, mainly ladies, by the way. And so my thanks also on behalf of my team. It was a great pleasure and honor to work with you. Indeed, today we had a very successful day. We saw the final adoption in the Council on two files, our proposal for a new set of European rules on business insolvency, and also our proposal on reinforced security for ID cards. We also discussed two civil law files that are still pending: the approval of ministers' assignment of claims and digitalization of justice. I will pause a while with the e-evidence mandates. Today we received the green light from the Council to open negotiations with the United States on electronic evidence. This paves the way for the launch of the negotiations with the United States, which I aim to do later this month. When I was in Washington in April this year, I met Attorney General William Barr, and we discussed this issue, as well as I used to have some discussions about this with Jeff Sessions in his position of the Attorney General. So this has some history, and it waited for this moment of getting this mandate to start the official negotiations. Mr. Barr confirmed his willingness to begin the negotiations, and I'm looking forward to working on the EU-wide agreement with the United States. We need this agreement to step up our fight against crime, as basically every prosecutor I spoke to said. It takes extremely long to obtain online evidence. We need this agreement to avoid also a potential conflicts between our e-evidence legislation and the US legislation, the so-called Cloud Act. This agreement aims to introduce legal certainty and clear fundamental rights safeguards like procedural rights and data protection. I would like to underline that we intend to conclude the internal EU rules of evidence proposal before we finalize the international negotiations. During the negotiations, the Commission will insist on an EU-wide approach covering all member states without fragmentation or discrimination. So, in other words, I will insist on it in my talks with William Barr, because there were some plans to have individual agreements with individual member states, which is something which we don't like to happen, and today's green light for the negotiations is just another evidence that we mean it very seriously, that the whole Europe has to be on board. I expect to meet William Barr to launch the negotiations in ideal situation either 18th or 19th of June in Bucharest. I also updated today the ministers on the European Public Prosecutor's Office. I'm happy to say that the work on the setting up of the EPPO is advancing, but as you are aware, the selection procedure of the European Chief Prosecutor is stalled because the Council and Parliament cannot agree on a common candidate. I have to stress on this moment that the European Chief Prosecutor plays a key role in the timely setting up of the office. In other words, there is nobody who can do the job. We have to wait for the fully fledged and appointed European Chief Prosecutor to do many very serious steps forward. That's why it's quite urgent, and I'd like to encourage the Council and Parliament to resume their negotiations as soon as possible. There are also other things that need to be done on EPPO. Some member states have yet to send their nominations for prosecutors. If you remember, we asked them for 3 candidates. The deadline was March this year, and we are still waiting for the nominations from several states. So I urged the member states, they knew exactly who I meant, that have not sent in their nominations to do so as soon as possible. Very interesting debate about the important strategic, absolutely crucial things such as mutual trust and the link to justice reform. We had good discussions about mutual recognition and mutual trust in the European justice area. We also stressed the importance of judicial training in this context. As you know, mutual recognition and mutual trust between member states is essential for EU law to function and deliver results for citizens. And this mutual trust depends on effective and independent justice systems based on respect for the rule of law. In this context, I want to mention yesterday's country-specific recommendations under the European Semester of Economic Governance. The Commission issued recommendations to 7 member states on the reforms of their justice systems. Good justice reforms based on the rule of law are beneficial for the economic and investment climate of each country and support efficient cross-border cooperation in the justice area. That's why we covered this sphere also by the European semester, which is focusing on the economic matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Presidency. Thank you, Commissioner. The floor is now open for questions. Please mention your name and the media that you're representing. I see no questions. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon.